last minute to warn ourselves, but roll call. I have everybody here but Cheryl, and we also have Kennedy currently here, one of our student representatives, and Alyssa, right, is going to be coming in after her church activities tonight. So welcome to your first official board meeting. I appreciate you being here today. Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none.
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
I have a motion from Rick and a second from Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Public comment. Does it look like we have one person here for public comment?
That's me.
Joy, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. Come on up and have a seat.
Silent. That'd be about when the kids would call.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Okay.
I was at church. I'm not just late for
No, I warned them.
Really good reason.
It's a very good reason, yep.
At least there's not a threatening podium thing. Hi guys.
Hello.
So I'm a mother of 4 kids in the Paynesville school system. And I think I represent a whole lot more people. Just looking at, I don't watch mainstream news a whole lot, but whatever comes in my Google feed, so I'll look on there. And I just know the atmosphere right now is pushing for masks again. And so I just wanted to express my concern as a mom for that, just the anxiety that masking our kids causes them. I know for me, the anxiety that it caused me to have to put on a mask everywhere I went. And I just think it's been super divisive, it divides people. You don't care about me if you're not wearing a mask, and I don't care about you or whatever. We live in America, and it's not communism, socialism yet. I'm praying it doesn't get there. But I think it's a segue right now, especially for kids, that we all know statistics, that it's 99.98% that they're going to make it through it just fine and have great immunity and all of that. And so I'd like to just plead with you guys, if that's something that's on the docket tonight, just from a mother's heart, to let our kids smile and laugh and have fun and breathe and let their brains grow. We need oxygen. It is what God gave us, And I always just joke, if God meant us to wear masks, we would have been born with them. I understand, there's stuff on both sides. But what I want to say is, we live in America where we're free to make choices, and that's amazing. So many millions of lives have given their blood, and families have made sacrifices of dads, grandpas. My grandpas, both of them served in World War II, and I didn't know any of them in the Civil War, but we were trying to get out of slavery. And I feel like masking our kids when it's unnecessary is almost like the brink of slavery for them. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but freedom to make a choice. I don't think anybody, that would want to mask their kids would want to come to a school where they're turned away because they want to wear a mask. Just like those who don't want to mask their kids, or kids that don't want to be masked, are turned away and shunned because they don't want to wear one. So my plea is just freedom. We're a small community. I think we can kind of test the waters here, see how it goes, and I just love a clean slate, fresh start this year without having the fear. And I know a whole bunch of more families that maybe didn't know about this meeting. I just made a couple phone calls and they're like, yes, that's how I feel. So I'm representing all those families and I'm sitting here. So I just got all dolled up for you guys. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for serving. Yeah, appreciate it. So, and I'm gonna go back to my kids. Bye guys.
All right. Thank you very much, Joy, for your remarks. Just let you know if there's any response that the board will make to you, it'll come through Janelle at a later date. All right. Thank you. Consent agenda. Janelle, I'll go to you to kind of run through this. We normally go to Cheryl. I always forget Cheryl. Cheryl's not here. So now I remember Cheryl. She's not here. So we'll, I guess, wait for her treasury report next time we get in touch with her and when she gets the opportunity to get in. So, but Janelle, I'll go to you for all personnel items.
Yep. So the minutes are attached as well for your review. The July 13th business meeting and then the August 10th. There was an addition, just a summary of the work session as well. The bills and transfers, Cheryl can speak to the next time. So you'll notice the assignments for fall, activities advised pause staff, and this is a new one, the PAC site supervisors, which is kind of an exciting place to be because we now have that site to staff, so that's pretty exciting. You'll notice that there were individuals that have been appointed. Some of them are minimal number of hours, but it is a new position. Those are new hires for us. You'll recognize Audra Lura, so that was you'll notice her name was on a previous agenda. She actually had an opportunity to apply for a 5th grade position and had interest there. Laura is a new science teacher. Colin is our new tech integrationist. Max interviewed for a CTE position with his background in the construction and trades. He'll be working on the construction trades course. Shelby Ruhoff, I think I may have lost connection to, there it goes. Shelby Ruhoff, you may recognize her name as well. She was a former student who has come on board as a paraprofessional for us. Courtney McInnes is a custodial, and then we have a resignation from Tracy Johnson.
I assume everybody had an opportunity to review all that. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make a
Second.
I got a motion from Maggie and a second from Bruce. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Carried. Communication items.
Sure.
No, back to you again.
Yep, so administratively, a couple things I just want to talk through with you. So one of the things that at the last meeting, the last business meeting that we kind of started talking about was, or we were highlighting the strategic plan. And so administratively, one of the things that I've been working with the administrators on, and they've really been doing a nice job, is making sure that some of the decisions and the discussions of how they're starting the school year, how they're moving forward with instructional opportunities, how they're moving forward with decisions, really are in alignment with the strategic plan. I've kind of pretty simply broken those into 3 areas. I've broken it into like our growth, I've broken it into our communications, and really then focused on fiscal stewardship. So those are really kind of the areas where we've been talking administratively and how are the decisions that we're making aligning with each of those areas. I do know at the last board meeting when we ran out a little bit of time, Mary Holmberg specifically just really wanted to make sure that we called out appreciation for the staff who have done a lot of work in preparation for our sites and our buildings, getting things ready for students to be in a couple of weeks. And so I do want to make sure that I just give a shout out and a kudos because there's just been a lot of work taking place over the summer. Our food service staff that have done food service program for our kiddos all summer at the elementary. It's just been a lot of commitment and a lot of great relationship builder for the kids that are coming in for our summer food program. So I just wanted to kind of just take a minute to say thank you to the administrative staff for maintaining the focus on the strategic plan. We are going to bring that forward at one of the next meetings, kind of with alignment of what we're doing. In addition to, at the next meeting, we're going to talk a little bit more about the operational levy or the operational referendum, which the fiscal stewardship. So we'll see a little bit more about that coming up. But they really are doing a nice job keeping focused and keeping moving forward. And I've really appreciated that. There hasn't been a lull as I've kind of come on board. Things have just been moving forward. So the piece I just wanted to kind of bring to your attention as we move forward.
All right, committee reports. Besides negotiations, I can just speak to that, but is there any other committee reports, organizational reports to be had? July and August are quite slow for most of that stuff anyway, so I'll just comment quickly on the negotiations. We're still progressing and moving forward with conversations with all bargaining groups at this point in time, and I feel like we're really making some headway on a lot of good avenues within those negotiations. So, really looking forward to continuing the conversation with a few groups here September and maybe starting to close some of those out. So, again, these things are progressing well. C on our item is usually the student representatives reports. Not to put you guys on the spot right now, but in the future, it's this meeting that you guys have an opportunity to just kind of give us a little tidbit of what's going on in the school, what's going on with the activities and things within the school day and the school weeks for you guys as well. So I don't know if you have anything you want to say other than
Online courses through Central Lake started today, so
Awesome.
that's how I spent my day. Yay! Volleyball is starting up again. We have a scrimmage on Friday, and then 31st is our first game.
Sweet.
31st already.
It's crazy.
So great. Well, thank you very much, and just, again, we look forward to having both of you on the board with us moving forward. So, looks like we have.
Can I just say that don't ever be afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
It's not just when you have that opportunity, but
Yeah.
I don't think you can vote,
No, you can't vote.
but I think you can speak up at any time you want.
You're just a member of a conversation within this board as the rest of us. So if you have a question on something that doesn't make sense to you, just ask. It's a great opportunity for you guys to learn, and we appreciate the feedback from within the student's perspective. So thank you, Rick.
Sometimes we just struggle with decisions based upon a few of us sitting around, but without you, we have nobody to ask, and therefore you can slow everything down. So it was a process to get this all set, but if you have something to add, just say so.
You know, my dad's not a problem for us Scout Walls.
Maybe they should introduce themselves, tell us what grade they're in and some of that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm Alyssa Gubbold, and I'm going to be a senior. I'm Kennedy Mansell, and I'm going to be in 11th grade.
So now is the idea that 1 year and then you're gonna serve 2 years?
Yep.
I did tell you that, okay.
They warned you.
That's good.
You'll be a pro in the next year. All right, it looks like we have nothing for old business, new business. Paynesville Area Schools Faculty and Staff Handbooks.
Yep. So below, you'll notice in each of the resources, the faculty handbooks and staff handbooks have been updated. After review, did anybody have any questions on those handbooks?
I think it looked pretty self-explanatory.
I will add there were a couple of clerical errors that were missed, and those have been updated and corrected. So just know that thank you for bringing that to our attention, because we want to make sure that it's accurate and correct. So thank you.
So I'll make a motion.
I'm looking for a motion. Got a motion from Bruce, and I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Elementary school student and parent handbook.
So the elementary student and parent handbook have also been up. There were minimal changes. I think that Mary has done a nice job checking in with staff, as has David, to make sure that the information that's in each of those books are reflective of what needs to happen currently. So those have been updated and presented.
Looking for a motion to approve the 2021-22 Paynesville Area Schools Elementary.
So move.
Got a motion from Bruce.
Second.
Second from Rick. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Secondary school student and parent handbook.
You'll notice the same format. Again, there's been minimal changes. Updated some of the clerical items as well, but those are also presented, and they've been reviewed by the staff and David and admin assistants. So
For a motion to approve this secondary student and parent handbook. I'll make that motion.
Second.
A second from Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Extracurricular activities handbook.
you'll see a very similar theme. So this has also been reviewed and presented, and so these have been updated as well and are reflective of the current status. So if there aren't any questions, we'd be looking for approval.
For a motion to approve the activities handbook.
So move.
Motion from Bruce,
I'll second.
second from Maggie. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Health and safety measures. For
Before we move further, can I make a comment? Those handbooks looked really good.
Oh,
Um,
I will pass that
we
along.
had a series of time where there were copies and pastes. Did it look comfortable to read and flow? These were very nice, I thought.
Oh, thank you, I'll pass that along.
Item E, health and safety measures for the 21-22 school year.
All right, so this one I want to spend a little bit of time just kind of walking through with you. So there's two things, I guess, that this action item entails. The first is a resolution of health and safety measures. So I am going to just pull that up and kind of walk through that with you a little bit, because similar to what the process that you used here, in response to changing information and a need to be responsive to what was happening in the community, the board passed a resolution to essentially authorize the superintendent and a team in collaboration with and making sure communication was taking place, in order to essentially make decisions that are in the best interest of the students and the staff at Paynesville area schools. So this resolution is similar. So I'm going to just pause since it's not coming up on the screen. Are you all able to access it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to just lean over with Maggie for just a second here. So the biggest thing, so the front of it is very filled with legalese about whereas and the districts and why we're even in this position about the pandemic and such and things and that nature. And then it really kind of gets into the heart of essentially this is outlining that our return to school plan is, which I'm going to go into next, would kind of govern, I guess, how I recommend the start of the school year to take place. The resolution, when we get to that point, really is outlining in section 1 and 2 that we need to be responsive to the information that we have using the team that we had in place, a collaboration of employees and staff, and then making sure that the board is informed of changes or of, I guess, maybe impending decisions, but that the decisions that are made can happen outside of a board meeting process in order to be responsive to what's happening. So that being said, I do want to kind of click on the link that's in there, the return to school plan. And this information is what was developed in conjunction with the COVID team that did the work for us last year. And I'm going to talk really slow and let it load because I don't remember exactly what it says. See, you just had to push it over. That's all you had to do. All right, so I won't necessarily read it verbatim, except I will, because this has been published and we did kind of highlight in a couple of different places. I made a mention to it in our Facebook Live. It's been shared out on the website through the agenda so that people had an opportunity to read kind of the discussion moving forward. We are, at this point in time, we're recommending opening the school 5 days a week in person with regular start and end times. From a face covering perspective, what we're recommending is opening without a face mask mandate, with the caveat that we understand that some families and some students will not be comfortable, and we want to make sure that we create an environment where they feel comfortable to do what they need to do. I don't know what everybody's family scenarios are, and they don't have to share those with us, but they need to know that they need to make decisions for what's right for them. And so our team felt very strongly that we would support, that because again, according to the CDC, it is a recommendation, and they are saying that there's benefit to the masking. We're also being responsive to the information that we have at our local level for data and cases. So that's the driver behind the current recommendation to open without the use of masks. I will add the caveat that at the end of this document, you'll see this is open and subject to change. As with any really good plan, we open a structure with, hey, we got to be fluid to what's happening locally. And that's one thing that, again, I think our team did really well last year, is responded to the information that was in front of us to make decisions and recommendations. The other piece that you'll notice that it does talk about the requirement for transportation, because that does remain a requirement. So we, our students on the buses and transportation for sporting events and for coming to and from school, they will be required to wear masks. Okay. Any questions on that before I move on to the other recommendations and the screenings and quarantines?
Well, I just want to say, I just want to reemphasize this because I feel strongly about it, but this is a wonderful learning opportunity to teach our kids and staff about diversity and acceptance.
Yeah.
And we cannot tolerate one way or the other, people making fun of or making comments about people wearing or not wearing masks.
Yep.
And they need to be taught that or learn that from the very first day.
Yep. Yep.
So I hope all staff are out there ready to engage the students and make sure that's.
Absolutely. The health screening and quarantine, a couple of things that are there just to highlight. You'll notice some of the and this is something that I think we learned probably a lot from last year, is that we need to just be very vigilant in monitoring our own health status and making sure that if I don't feel well, I'm gonna check my temp, and if I'm sick, I'm not gonna come to work. If I'm sick, if my kids are sick, I'm not gonna send them to school, right? I think the self-screening for symptoms and illnesses, that's something that we just really expect families to be doing. So we're not necessarily going to, we're not gonna have any screening procedures in classrooms. Clearly, our nurses do a really great job taking care of kids that don't feel well. And if there's things that are going on, they'll have conversations with families, and they take care of our littles when they're not feeling well. But the screening portion of that is gonna just remain at home. The other piece that is similar to prior to COVID, fevers are a really big indicator. And so we are asking that kids be fever-free, and let me add the caveat, without medication. So fever-free without Tylenol, ibuprofen, a fever-reducing medicine for 24 hours before being in school. Okay.
Are we still monitoring that?
We do not have temperature monitors
Not this year.
active, no.
Okay.
We are mandated to report COVID cases to the Minnesota Department of Health. That's the second requirement that's out besides the bus transportation. And that's something that we've done. We did all year last year. So if we have a positive case, we'll continue to report that. What we are standing behind is that if a student is a COVID positive case, they will be asked to quarantine for 10 days. That's a very consistent process to what's been done in the past. Again, the calculation for the 10 days is typically, if somebody was symptom-free and they had a test, it would be 10 days from the date of the test. If they had symptoms and then they went in and got a test, it would be 10 days from the start of their symptoms. So we'll use those similar processes in calculating days. So this is an area that we recognize we're gonna have to just monitor and pay attention to. So what we are recommending is that unvaccinated siblings of COVID positive students and unvaccinated children of a positive household member would quarantine for a minimum of 2 days. And I'll tell you why we came up with that in just a moment. And may return to school if they're not exhibiting symptoms. Okay, if symptoms begin, we ask that they report those to the school nurse. So here's the reason that we started here, and this is one of the areas I'm gonna be really honest with you. If we get to school and school starts and we're seeing that this is an issue, I expect our team to come back and make a recommendation to change this one. But I think this was a good place to start. And the reason we started here is because really what we observed over the last year is that usually within a couple of days we knew if families were if it was traveling throughout the family. Okay? So and I'll just use myself as an example, if I came down with COVID symptoms, and maybe I didn't get tested for the first day, I kind of waited it out, and then I get tested a couple of days, within that next day or two, if one of my kids was gonna get it, they were gonna get it those next couple of days. Okay, so that's why we based it on that. It is the decision tree that comes out from MDH does still recommend that family members it's the 14 days, and again, that is a recommendation, but one of the reasons also that we're taking this into consideration is because we don't have distance learning in the same way that we did last year, and our concern is making sure that kids have access, that kids can be in school. And so that's something that is different from last year, and I think it's a place to start. This is another area that is different from last year that we are recommending based again on what we observed over the course of the last year. Students who are determined to be close contacts of a positive student will not be required to be quarantined. So when we had students that were quarantined last year, or classrooms or clusters of kids, we really tried to look at the frequency that we had positives after quarantines, and we didn't have a lot of those. Now, what is being reported is different, is a different variant, so we'll have to be responsive to that information. And if we find situations where we've got a student that ends up in a COVID positive scenario, and we start to see other students that are developing symptoms and are also COVID positive, I think our team is gonna that's gonna be another area that we are gonna evaluate for recommendations of doing something different. But again, this is based on what we saw last year, and it's also based on our success of summer school. We didn't have cases, we didn't have, spread, and so that's kind of how we're basing this, okay? And then the final piece is that vaccinated students and staff will not be required to quarantine. You will see the next one down, that Paynesville area schools will not require COVID vaccinations for students, staff, or visitors, okay? The status of somebody's vaccination would be purely around if you have a staff member or a family member. If you are vaccinated, you would not have to quarantine, and that would be up to the individual to offer for information versus us to require. Social distancing, we are going to encourage social distancing when it's possible, but we are not going to require the 6 feet. That was an area where we learned very quickly that space is a commodity that sometimes we don't have, and so it was very difficult to have kids at that level and have a really and have continuity of instruction and have them feel, like it feel like a classroom. So we're gonna again be very cognizant of, there are some areas that we kind of liked. Honestly, it was kind of nice to not have kids like in each other's bubbles all the time, and we had kids that really liked that space. So there's some things we've learned from that, but it's not gonna be a requirement. It certainly is something that we'll pay attention to if we start to see anything different, but at this point in time, there's not the requirement of the 6 feet or even the 3 feet. It's gonna be the recommendation of let's be smart about our lines, let's be smart about our spaces, okay? Distance learning, so as I mentioned a little bit earlier, distance learning was a requirement of the executive order that expired. So we don't have the same capacity to just exhibit, have a kid, a family or a student just opt to distance learn. We do continue to explore what makes sense for us and how to look at an online learning option. Unfortunately, and I think I mentioned this at our last board meeting too, but there's been some changes to the structure in which we can do online learning or be approved as an online provider. And there are times that it just doesn't, we're trying to figure out how to make that make sense in our programming, in our programmatic model. And then two, we'll see if we end up in a situation where we've got a large group of kids that have to be quarantined. Well, clearly we're gonna figure out how we're gonna educate our kids, because that's our number one priority, that's why we're here. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarified that distance learning in its current capacity is no longer an option. Okay.
What's a large?
Pardon?
It's a large group of kids.
That's a really good question.
You throw those things out there and there's no definition.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that was happening to us was they were following all the Stearns County numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, what I see here is taking into account statistical information off of the CDC. That's what we're taking into account, that did it. But when you get to large numbers, for parents, does that mean they're in a class of 60 kids and when we hit 10 of those kids that have issues, are we gonna figure something out? Or how does that work?
Yep, so schools have parameters around illnesses such as influenza, for example. And I wanna say it's like 5% of the population. I shouldn't put a number out when I'm not 100% sure, but there's a set criteria that our school nurses work with, that kind of set, like, you need to do something to prevent the spread of influenza, for example. So there are numbers that are put out as guidelines that I think would make a lot of sense for our team to consider and look at. I think that that's one of those things that we're gonna really have to monitor. Now, I also, if we have a family that has 5 kids and they're in 5 different classrooms, well, that's 5, but it's not out of one classroom, you know? So I would say that we're gonna have to look at it in twofold. One is an elementary, as an elementary or middle school or secondary as a whole, like, unit, and then also in classrooms, and consider the same guidelines that are put out by the Department of Health for influenza and such. And I believe it's about 5%. We were well over 5% many times last year with kids being out, but we were also in a very different.
That's flu and influenza, we're talking about COVID related.
Yep, but I think when you ask about, like, what data could you use? That's data that we have that's consistent, that I think we could apply. Again, we're gonna have to see, Bruce, where if we have cases, how they come forward, and then there's a structure that has been in place. And I think that our nurses, our district nurse and our health aides in both of our sites will also have really good insight as to, here's how this is looking in the classroom. And then to our teacher groups, the teachers that are within that COVID team can also make, I think, a really strong recommendation of, here's that pivotal point where if I'm missing 5 kids out of my 20, it doesn't make sense, right? But I think really having those people that are in, like, the decision of half of my classroom is gone, I can't teach in the same capacity. Does that make sense?
I think just to that point, it would be hard to put a number to it because it's going to be a moving target depending on the situation, and to make a single recommendation of a guideline of a single number wouldn't necessarily make sense in other situations. So to utilize their managerial, decision-making powers to say it's a good time right now that Mrs. Quaid's class goes to distance learning because or the kindergartners do, or because of a specific reasoning. I guess that's how I would do that. Plus, these are our recommendations right now that could likely be changed in a month or two.
Yep. And here too, again, these are the recommendations based on the local decision-making process. If things change from a requirement perspective, then I think we're back to a different discussion.
And I do think it's important to have the flexibility because each situation is different. So if it was a smaller number, we learned very quickly that, not socially distancing in our classroom is causing an impact right away. Yep. That we're not stuck to a number to wait until it happens to make a change. That we could go, we're seeing something different than last year. Let's look at what our procedures are, and maybe we do need, I think it gives us flexibility at the local level to make decisions quicker versus having it at a threshold. Because there's part of me that it maybe that number would be too high even. We might say early on, gosh, we're seeing cases the first week, then reevaluate quickly. Because I think it is gonna be last year we saw it was moving target all the time.
Other questions before we move on to the next piece? So meals, one of the things that we talked about, we're gonna continue to have kids be cognizant of social distancing. The lunches and the breakfasts continue to be free to all students during this year. You'll notice if you've watched any of the either the town hall, the Facebook Lives, we're really sending a very strong message to have the forms completed regardless of the lunch status, because that's such a significant source of funding for us. And so just making sure that I'm adding another plug to make sure that the forms are filled out that are in the calendar. Take that paper out and fill it out and complete it. So The healthy facilities, I think that's one of the things where I also had Steve Guzzi, our new Buildings and Grounds Director, take a look at this and take a look at our current systems. He felt very comfortable that we've got some really good procedures in place. We are looking at the HVAC project for the elementary in next spring. So that is also on our radar. But it is, they certainly have done a lot of work around making sure that we have ventilation, we have open air, we've got good circulation, which is again one of the preventative strategies for that's recommended across the field. The cleaning protocols. So as a self-proclaimed germaphobe, I love the cleaning protocols. Many of our cleaning protocols will stay in place. I think we did notice that there was not only was it a cleaner building. We also noticed that, even just cases of like the stomach flu and things that would typically go through schools, we noticed less of them. So we're gonna just stick to some of the cleaning protocols that really seemed to work because I think it just was better for kids. And then the hygiene, I think that's something that we sometimes took for granted. So we're gonna continue to keep that in as a, let's not assume kids know how to wash their hands. Let's teach them how to wash their hands and we can sing the ABCs or happy birthday while we wash our hands. Visitors, we're gonna keep this kind of in place that it's gonna be limited to school hours and coordinated through the main office. Again, kind of knowing that we're opening up some wider, wider berths of no masking, no social distancing. Let's just make sure that if we've got additional adults in the building, we're able to track who was where in the event if it would be necessary. Students that have special education needs, obviously that's an area that sometimes we have maybe a heightened risk for exposure. And to Rick's point, what our emphasis and focus here is that we really need to make certain that families and students are comfortable doing what they feel is best for them, and special education accommodations are typically developed through a team, but I think that it just brings back the emphasis on making sure that we create an environment that's supportive for individuals to make the decisions that are necessary for them. And this is my caveat, like this is subject to change. And again, I think that by authorizing a resolution to make the decisions based on the information that we have at hand, that really does allow, like last year, the team to make decisions in response to the local data and in response to what's happening here in our zip code, in our surrounding areas, versus the county as a whole. I think our county has some pockets of population that are obviously, St. Cloud is a much more populous area, and so that information may not be the same as Paynesville's. So let's take a look at our information and make decisions around our area and what we're seeing in the schools as kind of the basis for our decision. So any questions about that plan that's linked into the resolution for the start of the school year?
That, we'll look for a motion to.
Actually, it'll be a resolution, so we'll have to, yeah. There we go.
Still need a motion for the resolution and a second, and then we'll do a roll call.
I'll make a motion.
A motion from Maggie. And I will second it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call whenever you're ready, Miranda.
Thomas.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
Kate.
Aye.
Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Alright.
F, West Central Education District Joint Powers Agreement.
Okay. So I'll ask Meg to kind of step in if I miss anything, but So the West Central Education District is the district that provides services on our behalf. And it operates under a joint powers agreement. And so I'm gonna just pull up my talking points that have, because it was interesting. The West Central Ed District started way back in 1979, which is kind of but it started under the Dairyland Special Education Cooperative, which I thought was kind of an interesting, it's been in existence for a long time. The members of that, if you're not aware, are, so we have Albany, Melrose, Paynesville, and Sauk Center. So those are the current members. Back in the day when it first started, Gray Eagle was part of that, but at this point in time, it's just the 4. The Joint Powers Agreement has not been altered significantly since about 2001. There were some minor revisions in 89, 90, and 2001. Coming from a background that I very much understand what this is, I understand why these joint powers agreements are not changed very frequently, because it's a lot of maneuvering and it's a lot of discussion, and the changes that they're recommended really are, in my opinion, are sound changes to recommend. So Maggie, are you okay if I just walk through some of the highlights? Okay. So some of the things that they're doing is actually when they're the former structure looked more like bylaws. So like as a board, you're kind of familiar with what a bylaw is versus like a board policy or an agreement. So the joint powers agreement is now structured much more in a way that is much more formalized. And so I think that helps to spell out process and procedure, which is important when you're dealing with 4 districts that have kind of all of us are making decisions or recommendations for one entity. So I think that's really beneficial. The governing process for the West Central Education District is there is a board representative, Maggie is our board representative, and then it used to be that there was a backup board member, and that backup board member would oftentimes, and they meet, that board meets every other month, and so there weren't a lot of opportunities for that backup person to really kind of get to know the structure, the nuances, what are we talking about? So the recommendation through the review of this process was that the superintendent, so the board is made up of a board member, and then the superintendent is there in conjunction with the board member. So if the board member is absent, a superintendent would be the voting member instead of having an alternate that would attend that may not have all the background and all the information. Okay, and that seems to really make sense when I was listening to that. They do have an executive director who would also serve as a secretary. That wasn't identified prior. It identifies who the services that are provided to members of the education district, talks a little bit about billing procedures. One of the things that I think was pretty significant that I think I want to just kind of draw your attention to is that instead of identifying that it was a majority vote for a change in structure, so again, there's currently 4 members of that West Central Education District. So it used to be that if 3 of the 4 would want to change, it would so be it. They felt important, and maybe if you can give history if necessary, but they found that with the size of 4 members, if there was going to be a structural change, they felt strongly that it should be unanimous. And so I think that's and that makes sense to me as well. You know, it's 4 members. So making sure that all 4 members have a really solid understanding and support of a structural change, meaning somebody coming in, somebody leaving, and then outlining that process. Okay. And then the other piece that was discussed is that amendments and changes to the joint powers agreement. So here's the way this works right now, is that our board here, so you all have to approve it. Each of the school boards have to approve it, and then it goes to the West Central Education District Board. So unless it's approved at all of the board levels, it cannot go to the West Central Ed District Board. The reason that I think that's important is because, as we just talked about, things like structural changes with somebody coming in or somebody leaving, those have pretty substantial financial impact for a member district. And so those types of changes would be outlined in the joint powers agreement. So those types of changes would come to the whole board. And I'm assuming that, Maggie, is there anything that you wanted to add in addition to that?
Maybe just a little bit more about the unanimous part. We did spend a lot of time and a couple meetings talking through this in discussion and on going back to the board, because there was a time when we said, well, maybe it shouldn't come back to the full board because you're not kind of in the weeds of everything. But being it is just 4 of us and there are such budget implications by somebody leaving or coming on, we went back to the importance of having the full board involved in that decision, and then again, having that unanimous vote. Because they have looked at other schools or districts coming on, but there were some districts that would be disproportionately impacted financially. And so it is a really big decision. Not that we want those discussions, we wanna see if it would work for other districts to come on, that is a hope and goal. But there's a lot to it, and that's why it's kind of like now everybody needs to participate in those discussions versus it being down to board members at a board meeting, if that makes sense.
So those are the high level overview of the changes to the joint powers agreement from the West Central Education District.
Looking for a motion to approve the West Central Education District Joint Powers Agreement as presented.
So move.
Got a motion from Bruce,
I'll second.
second from Maggie. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Central Minnesota Credit Union credit card authorization.
So you will notice that Steve Guzzi and Colin Wolf are recommended for the credit card authorization. So that would be a replacement from their previous positions. So those are they're not new authorizations, they're replacements, but it still requires board action. And then we would be all updated and ready to roll.
Looking for a motion for the new credit card
Move.
users. Motion from Rick,
Second.
second from Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Review upcoming meetings. Look how short that list is.
Oh, right?
Like, where's
Say
it
two-
going negotiating?
Do we have a West Central Ed? Is that not on here?
September
Maybe we don't.
Oh,
On the 13th.
September 13th. Miranda, can you make sure you add that, please? September 13th.
That's what I have in my calendar unless
West
something's
Central Ed.
changed.
We have a C meeting in September too, right? Right? No? Maybe.
What time, Maggie?
Like,
6:30.
let's see. I think we did talk about that, Jane.
Yeah.
September 24th is the C general membership meeting, so that will be for Jake. Sorry about that, I just missed those.
Says so August 31st custodial. I don't have that in my calendar.
Let's see what I.
And then
I have, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on the 31st. Okay, I have that in my calendar. And I have teachers on September 22nd.
And so this can be a point of clarity for me.
Yep.
Do you put everything for the entire month or up until the next board meeting?
I feel like it was for the month.
I feel
Maybe
like it was
not.
kind of for the
Yeah.
month, too. I don't recall.
So then
That's a good
the,
question.
cause I think some of these were, cause I think when Miranda and I were looking at it,
You remember how we did that before? It was always just up to the next board.
and we can just do
Well,
it.
because work and learn session, we didn't talk about upcoming meetings, so it'd have to be up to at least the next business meeting.
Okay, so the
Um,
business meeting to business meeting,
Yeah, I'd say we'd at least do that.
okay, good.
So the other one, did we have put on the calendar, the
Yes.
paras? I don't have that on my calendar either, I don't think I have my phone in the room when
Yeah, I don't know.
we finished that.
But it was after school started again.
It's before the next board meeting, it's before the 24th, 4 to 6.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, 4 to 6
Or
on
4
the
to-
24th.
Ha,
That one's actually not on the actual
Or on the
calendar either.
28th.
I don't think so. Okay,
So September 28th from 4 to 6 with the parent professionals. Okay.
well, there we go.
And then
I can
another
make sure
part,
my calendar straight.
will we
So
start?
now we just made this one, so 3 on
There
it.
has to be more, I feel like there's always, are we gonna start seeing then like our policy committee meetings, like all those
Yep.
meetings, they'll start, I
Yep.
assume, they usually start up in September, maybe
Yep.
it is October, but all the
Yeah.
regular committee
I
meetings,
think we went October.
was it October?
Because we got through that first month of school and
Okay.
started, and then the same thing would be facility committee.
Facility.
Our facility committee will need to meet, and then
Now that
climate
one,
and culture, I mean, there's a lot of, we have a lot of committees.
yeah, so it just matters of smooth, yeah, we'll need to get on a,
So I'll have
maybe
Miranda take a look
if
at
nothing else,
that.
our work and learn
list,
session,
the cadence
if
of that.
we're talking about committee, we can have that on our next work and learn
Perfect.
agenda is committees and getting those
Those schedules.
scheduled
Yep.
out, so
Yep.
we can get moving on some of those, because I know we have some important work that would kind of been,
We took a lull.
yeah,
It's gonna-
yeah,
You bet.
necessary one, but.
Yep.
Anybody else, anything else in upcoming meetings?
For clarification, which ones are me and Kennedy supposed to be at?
Oh, that's-
The work and learn, the Tuesday evenings, the work and learn, would be September 14th, and then, Tuesday, September 28th, 6 to 8. Miranda wants to touch base with you before you leave, and she'll get your contact information, and she'll forward you calendar appointments and the agendas for all these meetings, so you can see those ahead of the meeting time as well, so you don't feel like you're coming in lost. So,
And then too, I presume as you guys take a look at the agenda, if they have questions about that, you certainly would just reach out to me if you have any questions, or you could reach out to Thomas too, but, you know, feel free to let me know if you have questions as the agenda goes out.
yeah, you can get Miranda your contact information, what email you prefer to use, and everything else, that she can get those calendars, appointments on your calendar and that way, so. Alright,
Good question of clarification.
yes, thank you.
all of the policy meetings and all.
Yeah, every meeting.
This is your life now.
Alright, look for motion to adjourn.
I move the board do now adjourn.
A motion from Jake,
I'll second.
a second from Maggie, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no, carried.
Wonderful.
Good job, everyone.
So.
Thank